So it's just
Oh,
regular
it's just
whenever
regular.
you start it. Yep.
Good morning. Good morning. We are here once again. We're super excited. We're live and in direct in person here with the More Motivation podcast.
Yes.
We are so excited about this week's content and what we're going to bring to the people. I am the co-host, Troy Christopher Moore. We're here with the founder and the president, Mr.
Yes.
Kendrick Moore. Good
Yes.
morning, Kendrick. How you doing this morning?
Man, I'm great, man, and we got our boy Cody here this
Got an
morning.
extra
Cody
guest.
said, "Listen, I'm up early in the morning. Let me come join you guys." So we got our guy Cody down here this morning. Cody with a K. So we excited and ready to deliver.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Let's get right into this. But as we do here at More Motivation, we like to shout out
Right.
businesses, things going on in the community.
Right.
Some things that's really doing some positive things. So,
Right.
what do we have for this particular week for the shout
Yeah,
out?
Troy. I you know, we need to make sure that we recognize efforts too.
Yeah.
Because so many times we look at results, but there are people that are giving their best with what they have to try to improve the community.
Correct.
So there are just a lot of community people, whether it's in the basketball space, the athletic spaces. My man Turbo does the training and stuff. He's one of the best in the business of helping young people develop. My guy Doug Wiggins, who I got a chance to coach, he played at UConn from East Hartford. He got his train with Wiggins. But it's a ton of people, man. And like I said, we just want to give a shout out to everybody that's given an effort to improve the community.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, man, because sometimes we just always, we get to the result part before we
Right.
look at the effort.
Right.
So everybody that's out there, man, make sure you're supporting the community too.
Right.
Right back, feed your own, invest in your community. And that starts with really recognizing those that are trying to do the good work.
Man, that's some awesome stuff, man. And
Yes.
sometimes it just go overlooked because we see so much negativity.
Yes, that's right.
Going
That's right.
on. But
That's
man,
right.
shout out to all those that's in the community making a difference, man. Just holding it down, doing what you do.
Right.
Just know here at More Motivation, man, we're in your corner. So
For sure.
Thank
For
you
sure.
that.
Yep.
So we're gonna move forward, but before we get into the podcast, let's talk about the feedback we got from last week.
Yeah.
We had some
Yep.
very exciting, startling, motivating feedback from last week.
Yeah.
So talk to us about some of the feedback that we got.
And the thing of it is, Troy, as we said, is it's startling. At this point, I don't even know if it's startling anymore. As we touched on before, I think people are really buying into what's going on.
Right.
And really using this as that outlet, that platform to get better.
Right.
So I think people are really starting to do that, and it's becoming a consistent thing. And we challenge people on here to give their feedback. I know you challenge a lot of people directly that are actually calling you, letting you know what's going on.
Right.
So, it's and we appreciate it. We appreciate it because that's why we do it. It's from the heart, and it's just we talk about motivation, perspective, and we just want people to really open their eyes to what's going on, and hopefully we can impact them.
Man, that's some awesome stuff, man. And just for the More Motivation team, just when we think we're not making a difference,
Right.
You hear that one thing, like the lady hit me up at like 5 something in the morning.
Right.
It's like, I just listened at the podcast. I had sent it to her days before.
Right.
I just listened at it, and it helped challenge me with my marriage. It helped challenge me with, how I rear my children.
Right.
We talk about that proximity to greatness. So, man, super shout out to the More Motivation team,
Right.
Crudy, as well as our producer,
Right.
For this content that we put out.
Yeah.
Week to week.
And also, Troy, we can't forget the people that even are supporting us, because,
Right.
we're here the ones doing it.
For sure.
But the team is bigger than us. Those people that wrap their arms around us and support us in ways that, that outsiders don't get a chance to see.
For sure.
It's funny because that's going to be a part of what we're going to talk about today, too.
For sure. So now, since we done tapped our toe into the water a little bit,
Right.
let's get right into this
Yeah.
week. So what we got for this week's podcast?
So, Troy, man, this conversation's been coming up and about culture. And I'm just really big on culture and what it does to any organization, any team. And I'm about building a championship culture. But what people need to know is the importance of the 12th man to that culture.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. The 12th man is so pivotal. Some people just look at it as the last person on the bench.
Right.
You know what I mean? But not realizing how pivotal that is.
That's
so
right.
Let's get into this content for this week. Talk to
Yeah.
us.
So that 12th man, and just you said it, the last person on the bench, right? So I'm at one of the schools and I'm talking to them about culture. I'm on a PD call with staff. I'm talking to them about culture, and I made a direct correlation to the 12th man and how important that is. And I brought it right back to high school where we're thinking about, man, our team that went 27-0. You know, I was fortunate to be on a team that went 27-0. In a really competitive environment, you know, the high school basketball was competitive back then. We just had a really, really good team, from top to bottom, like our first player to our last person on the bench, like just a really talented team. And sometimes we don't want to call ourselves the dream team, but it was one of those things where our greatest competition could have been in practice sometimes. That's how good our team was.
Right.
You know, but when you're in those situations, the difficulty is playing all 12 players, you know, especially in the meaningful minutes.
Yeah.
So I went right to, like, man, because people only saw the record, you know, the casual fan, they only see the wins, the highlights.
Right.
I told people 30 years later, people don't remember us because we won. They remember us and celebrate us still till today because of how we did it.
Correct.
You know, how we did it, the fashion that we did it, the love we showed each other. And it had to do directly with the culture. And more importantly, it had to do with the 12th man. Right? Our 12th man could have started on a lot of teams. You know, so when we think about it, it was difficult for him, player number 11, player number 10, not to really get minutes. You know, and when we talk about culture, I always look at those people in that particular situation when we went 27-0. I'm looking at the 12th man.
Right.
Because if he can find a space to be happy, we probably still could have won if he wasn't, but it made it more enjoyable.
Right.
You know, it made it more fun.
Right.
You know, it made it the team that we were, you know, and it was just, like I said, a great reflection of what, if that 12th man is happy and satisfied and buying into the culture, right away, you have an opportunity to win a championship. And I know we're talking about sports, but that's in any team, organization, and life. You know, 1 through 12, being on the same page, buying in to build that championship culture.
Kendrick, I'm going to tap into this really quick.
Yep.
Because you said something there that I think was very, very critical for our listeners. When you talked about that 12th man could have went somewhere and started somewhere else. Right. So talk to us about the sacrifice, because he would rather be the 12th man than be the man.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
On another team. So talk to us about how much better the team was because of the sacrifice of the 12th man.
And Troy, that player, that understanding of where he is, because we're talking what you saying, Troy, like he could have went somewhere else. Like I said, we had 4 or 5 players, again, all could be starters on other teams in the state of Connecticut at that time, like literally, not a question about it. So they all made huge sacrifices. Like we had even people that were already transferring in that understood, like being on our team, you're not going to be a starter.
Right.
You know, they're moving, transferring location, but being where you were, you can still stay at your school. Even as a senior, you'll be a starter. So that sacrifice was huge, Troy. Like understanding big picture. You know, a lot of people don't really look at that when they're trying to build a championship culture, big picture.
Right.
You know, we only judge things on the surface. We judge wins and losses on the surface. You know, we don't really think about those people that are making the commitment. In our case, though, we did. You know, that was huge for us because we did understand that and we recognized them for making those sacrifices.
Right.
It's not like they were doing it and we didn't acknowledge the importance of them being a part of us.
Right.
So, man, that's very important that you mentioned it, because the other way it could have went, Troy, is, you know, if they're unhappy, number 12, nobody wants to be unhappy alone.
Correct. Correct.
You know,
Correct.
you're unhappy. You don't want to, you can be happy alone.
Right.
You don't want to be unhappy alone.
Correct.
So if number 12 didn't understand the value of making a full commitment, you better believe after week 1, I'm going to try to get number 11 on my side too, to be unhappy.
Right. Right.
You know, because 12 being unhappy by himself might not be that bad. He get 2 or 3 other people on board. You know, now we start to see the culture shift.
Right.
You look at that in organizations, right? You wonder why certain teams aren't maximizing their potential. It's probably because number 12, number 11, you know, those people that we're not really paying attention to.
Right.
Troy, the cook in an organization, the custodians in an organization, you know, they're unhappy. They start to talk and start messing up the culture, and you just thinking the people upstairs making the decisions but no, it's an overall thing. And when we really understand that, we said championship culture. We said we want to be number 1.
Right.
When you understand that, it's not even about the wins and losses.
Right.
What we have thought, if we not have won the championship, it'd have been unsuccessful. Yeah, and in a place, you know, a part of us would have been like, man, we lost.
Right.
But we would have still been able to look at each other and say we all gave our best. You know, it just made it more worthwhile that we put the cherry on top by going 27-0.
Right.
And those companies and organizations, when everything ain't going to be perfect.
Right.
So when things don't work out, when 1 through 12 or 1 through 100, however many people are in that business or organization, if they're working towards the same goal, it makes everything worth it.
Kendrick, I'm now curious, right? Because for a lot of us, we got to see the 27-0 from the outside. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we got to be like, man, yo, they getting it done, man. You know.
Right.
And now because of this topic, I don't think. Well, I know for me, we didn't think about, man, what's really going on the inside.
Right. Right. Right.
You know. So talk to us about how. Did someone step up and have a conversation with number 10, 11, 12 to get them to buy in?
Right.
So talk to us about how that kind of shaped out to even have that culture of the championship team.
And so again, Troy, we're in totally different eras right now, right? So we got a chance to know each other well beyond just the season. Okay. So even prior to that, right? We're playing together in the summer. We're playing together in the fall.
Right.
And I always say this. The coach, yes, they make the final decision, but the players become the judges, you know, in good teams.
Yeah.
The coach sets the vision. The players drive the culture in many ways.
Great point.
So right away, Troy, when we're playing with each other throughout the summer, you know, like, you know, in the fall, things start to weed themselves out in terms of who's at the top of the pecking order and who's, you know, whatever you want to call it, near the bottom.
Right.
So 1 through 12, yes, it may get a little congested when you talk about maybe players 5 through 8, 9. You know, that's where the real, man, I might be able to earn a little more minutes than player number 6 or whatever. But for the most part, it pans out itself. So we really never had to have a specific conversation with each player. But our thing was understanding, we understand the game. We understand how this works.
Yeah.
We understand where we are is based on not only our development from summer to fall, but a lifetime of work up to that point where how good we are as actual players.
Right.
You know, so it was fair judgment.
Yeah.
Fair judgment based on how you impact the game. Sure, players 7, 8, 9 thought they should be playing more. I would too. 10, 11, 12. I would too. Because here's the deal, Troy. They all have to go through the same workouts.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it ain't like during practice they get to sit down because they're player number 11.
Right.
They still got to run the same suicides.
Right.
They still got to be on time for classes. They got to do everything.
Right.
But that's when the culture is strong. Because we ain't making no gripes about the things that come along with the territory. You know? But like I said, so here's the deal, Troy. And it's natural to be a little disappointed or frustrated if you're not getting minutes that you want. That's okay.
Right.
That's okay. You can, but it's about how you handle it. You know, it's all right to not be the one to get your name in the paper, but it's how you handle it.
Right.
So that's where we, as our own self kind of governing that space, we were all mature about it. And if there were questions, we handled it as young as we were.
Right.
You know, as mature young adults.
Right.
Because here's the deal. There was no bias. It was all about basketball. It was all about the productivity. When we get on the court, those specific groups, and here's the deal. We love what we did so much. A part of us, that 1 through 5, 1 through 6, 7, almost like winning the way we did in terms of number, you know, how much we won by, was because we wanted to make sure players 8, 9 through 12 got a chance to get in those games.
Right. Right.
You know, so if we got a chance to handle teams because we know their worth.
Right.
We know their value. And it was an opportunity on our part. It was our responsibility to make sure the rest of the world knew their value as well. Wow. You know, so that was really important for us. And I'm glad you asked that because each member has a responsibility. You know, and even though we didn't talk about it in terms of, oh man, make sure we handle this correctly, but we knew our response, each man to himself knew our responsibility to one another.
Kendrick, you threw a lot out there in that particular segment, right? Talk to us about, oh man, that was a lot. Talk to us about how, you know, like you said, you guys stepped up to the plate to even sacrifice yourselves to do more.
Right.
So that the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th can get in the game. Talk to us about how that's so important, not only just to the game of basketball, but just in general with life itself.
Troy, let me tell you this, man. Like, everywhere I go, like, I think those values are instilled and were instilled in so many of us just growing up, the environments that we were in, you know, from spaces where people, I always say this, biggest sacrifices in our family and a lot of those families. It's not how much we were given, but it was the fact that people who didn't have a lot gave us a lot.
Right.
You know, that's true sacrifice. And we recognize that. So we had a lot of players, Troy, that understood giving back. Just in general, just give to others, live generously. Whatever we have, let's make sure everybody around us is okay. We are not the ones that are just fixated on the limelight. Make sure everybody who's a part of our journey, you know, understands what's going on, those that are watching, and make sure that we value everybody. Those traits carried on till today with me. If I'm working in schools, Troy, and when I was working in schools, I used to set up honoring the custodians, the lunch attendants. I made sure they got their recognition on a grand scale, you know, recognizing them at pep rallies and you know what I'm saying? Like, no, they're a part of the team too.
Correct.
And I wanted everybody to know that, but bigger picture, for them to understand their value. You know, so these are lifelong traits you have. And when you get a collective that understand that, it's easier to build that championship culture we're talking about. It's hard to, here's the deal. it's hard to buy in. As long as you understand your value, it's easy to buy in when you understand your value, but it's hard to buy in because everybody's not going to always get the same attention.
Correct.
From the success.
Correct.
You know, so now you get to wondering but it was our responsibility, as I said, Troy, to make sure that everybody here going to get recognized. One way, shape, or form. You know, we're going to make sure everybody, and when you do that, when everybody's committed to that, those championship cultures are just easier to build.
Easy to build. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Now you had said earlier, and like I said, I'm just kind of picking pieces of these nuggets. You had said earlier that one of the ways that helped build your culture was what you guys did outside of basketball. Right? How do you feel about building a culture, you know, regards to organizations, you know, and that kind of thing? Because people are quick to say, man, once I log off at 4:30, that's it.
That's right.
I don't want to be.
That's
you know,
right.
I'll see you tomorrow at 8
That's
o'clock.
right.
You know, blah 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 blah.
That's right.
So talk to us about how important that is of building that particular championship culture, even in a work environment space.
And this is everywhere, Troy. I challenge people with you are in charge of your group. Find one connected activity to your workplace outside of the work. I want you to make one connection to the place that you're involved in, whatever team you're with, whatever school you attend, whatever outside of the work. Right? Outside of just the physical labor that you're doing, outside of the making calls for work, outside of the being in class if you're at school. You want to listen, we are masters at building culture and getting people to really buy in. But it has these things, if they're followed, man, listen, they're almost bulletproof. You know, because it's about getting as many people on board doing the right thing.
Right.
As many people on board. You might not be the most talented. I'm telling you, if I can get more people on board doing the right thing, I'm going to beat more talented people.
Correct.
We're going to outwork more because more people are going to be invested.
Right.
More people are just naturally going to be invested.
Right.
So I always say that. I'll start there, Troy. And I know for time purposes, you know, but I always challenge groups. Can we find one thing that we can connect to our workplace outside of the work? Whether it's building certain relationships after work with team building activities, hanging out, having conversations out other than the work.
Right.
Other than the work. Because when you do that, you feel more of a connection to the space and the people that's involved. Yeah.
Wow. We got to get ready to cut this short, man. But I mean, literally, we can go on
Yes,
and on
yes.
and on about this. About because one of the key words you said there was championship culture, right? And I think sometimes we elude that because we don't want to buy in. Right? So take us out and with this podcast about how important it is to have the buy-in and how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
To championship culture.
Listen, what they say, star in your role. Everybody on every team in every organization has a role to play. When you're going to school, you have a role. When you are hired to an organization, whatever it is, like when you do that job description is your role. When you join a team, you have a role. Your responsibility to yourself, what we say, maximize your ability.
Right.
Your responsibility to yourself is to be a star in that role. Like, how do you star in your role? Right? Your job and responsibility is not to be the star in someone else's role. And that's where we mess up.
Right.
You know, we start asking for that other position before it's your time to have that position.
Correct.
It wasn't the 12th man on our team job to take my position. You know, it was for him to be a star in his role at the time. And here's the deal. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy all the time.
Right.
But we challenge people with that. And to get people to buy in, Troy, we get them to understand long-term value.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's big with us. When we're creating these championship cultures, it's about getting you to understand long-term value. What is this going to do with you, do for you?
Yeah.
Because here's the deal. If number 12 buys in and number 1 and 2 don't, number 1 and 2 might have the early success while number 12 learned the disciplines and responsibilities. We said the Division I mindset.
Right.
They might be the ones having a long-term success.
Correct.
You know,
Right.
so that's a big part of this. Like you said,
Right.
we can go on forever with this, man. Like this
Right.
conversation,
Yeah.
because culture is everything.
Yes. Yes.
Culture drives everything.
Yeah.
You want to win? Build the right culture.
Mm.
You know, and it's our job to make sure we let our listeners know what it takes and what it looks like and what it can do for you to have a championship culture. And that starts with the 12th man. So lock in.
Listeners, you heard it here. Build your championship culture. You are now accountable for what you just heard. So there's no excuses. Thank you so much for tuning in this week's podcast. Man, listen, we love you as our supporters. We love to hear from you. Send your feedback. We build other podcasts based upon the feedback that you have from us. So thank you. Have a fabulous week and make sure you build that championship culture. Take care, everyone.
Lock in.
I just want to thank my son, Kenrick Moore, for dedicating his life to helping our youth. I know it's a tough task, but keep up the good work with Moore Basketball Clinic. I'm proud of the man you have become. I love you.